Our sermon for Remembrance Sunday 2021. As you probably know, I have a brother in the army called Eamon. He's Lieutenant Colonel and presently based in Bahrain in the Middle East. I've visited him many times on army bases in which he stayed in England, Northern Ireland 3 times, Akrotiri in Cyprus, and in Germany at the Hereford base. So I've got to know what life is like on an army base. On each occasion, I've met the chaplains and celebrated Mass with them, and even said Masses on the base on my own, so they could take a well-earned break. The chaplains of the forces go wherever the troops go, either on the base or also on the war front. In this diocese, there was a priest called Father Corbett. He was parish priest of Sacred Hearts in Gorton, Manchester. He had a hand blown off on the landing beaches on D-Day in Normandy 1944. A piece of shrapnel hit him and blew his hand off, and would have continued through his body to his heart and killed him, but he was saved by the chalice he was carrying in a backpack. But because he had just landed on the beach, the backpack was over his chest. So the piece of shrapnel hit the chalice he was carrying, and the chalice saved his life. He had a prosthetic hand fitted with a black glove over it, and used to say Mass with that chalice every day, so as to thank God for being saved from instant death. Bishop Holland was a bishop of this diocese from 1964 to 1984. He was a Navy chaplain during the war, and he too took part in D-Day landings in 1944 in Normandy. He was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for rescuing soldiers under fire and putting his own life in mortal danger. If you ever see the film Saving Private Ryan, you'll see the medics and the chaplains crawling among the dead, among that merciless hail of machine gun bullets to try and help them. I visited landing beaches many times and seen the huge Commonwealth War Grave Cemetery of St Vincent-sur-Mer. Today, I'd like to talk about another chaplain called Emil Capone from America. Emil Capone was born in 1916, died in 1951. Catholic priest and US Army chaplain from Kansas. He exhibited heroic virtue as a prisoner of war during the Korean War. He was born in a small farming community in Kansas, was ordained in June 1944, and assigned to his home parish in Kansas. He entered the US Chaplains Corps in 1944, served during World War II in Burma and India, and with the Korean War brewing at the beginning of 1950, was assigned to Japan and Korea. On the 25th of June 1950, North Korea invaded South Korea. In July, Capone and the 8th Cavalry Regiment of the Army's 1st Cavalry Division were sent to defend the South. Father Capone quickly became known for his willingness to risk his own life in order to save his men. He sometimes used the hood of his jeep as an altar on which to celebrate Mass and hear confessions. The 8th Cavalry Regiment pushed into North Korea, but on the 1st of November 1950, they suffered a surprise attack by the Chinese army at Unsan. When Father Capone's commanders ordered evacuation, he chose to stay. By all accounts, Father Capone refused to save his own skin, dodged bullets, and gave the last rites to as many dying soldiers as he could reach. He carried one man whose leg had been shattered by shrapnel in his arms to safety. During the forced 80-mile march to a prison camp in the freezing cold, Father Capone showed up flagging spirits and encouraged his men to help those too wounded to walk. He spent 7 months as a POW. Nearly half the prisoners died that first winter from cold and starvation. Given such conditions, Father Capone decided to pray to St. Dismas, the good thief, and they would sneak extra rations for his men. He offered freezing prisoners his own clothes, bathed their wounds, exhorted them to keep going. The guards ridiculed his faith. At night he slipped into huts to lead prisoners in prayer and administer the sacraments. Just for a moment, one said, he could turn a mud hut into a cathedral. He had been forbidden to celebrate Easter Mass, but did so anyway, holding up a small crucifix he'd fashioned from sticks. But his own health was rapidly failing. Suffering from malnutrition, dysentery, pneumonia, and a blood clot in his leg, Father Capone was hauled off to a death house and deprived of food and water. He lasted 2 days, dying on the 23rd of May, 1951. His surviving fellow prisoners were freed 2 years later, and the Father Capone stories began trickling out. 70 years later, Herbert Miller, the sergeant whose leg had been shattered at the Battle of Unsan, described the ensuing forced march. Father Capone helped me along. Sometimes he'd carry me, sometimes he'd put his arm round me, helping me hop on one leg. That's the way we went from there to prison camp. It was a long journey. God sent that man to me. As sure as I was born, the Lord sent him and he obeyed. You'll never find a man like him, not on this side of heaven. He was posthumously awarded the military's Medal of Honor in 2013 and is one of the most highly decorated military chaplains in US history. Father Capone's cause for canonization formally opened in 1993, giving him the title Servant of God.